second one is kind of just floating in the
Yo, what's up? You will probably see, if you're familiar with any of my other videos, that I'm not wearing a tank top. Actually, can't see it that well on the camera. That's a Final Fantasy VII theme shirt. Because that's what I'm going to be doing. I have a love affair with this game. I think it's the greatest game ever created. I think it is the best story ever told, as the title of the stream implies. I'm recording this, I'm streaming this. Oh, Stump says hi. I'm recording this and streaming it in the hopes that I guess it might be one of my last playthroughs of the ever original Final Fantasy VII. I think it's going to be hard once the remake compilation is out and how good those games are to not play those. And I've always replayed this game once a year, and then I realized I hadn't replayed it since the remake came out. But remake and rebirth feel a little bit weird to replay because the story's incomplete. And maybe I'm fooling myself saying I'll never replay it again, but this is going to be very in depth. It's going to take a long time to get through. But I'm pretty excited about it. I put a lot of work into putting this together, so hopefully it's not something that is just streamed and then lost. These VODs are going to get uploaded to YouTube, and it's going to be a in-depth video guide to all things Final Fantasy VII OG related. I use Absolute Steve's Guide, as I always have, as anyone does that plays this game, as a baseline. I've edited a copy that I've downloaded over the years to make it, easier for me to read, edited out information if anyone's read his guide. He adds a lot of stuff that is, good context, but I don't need to know the percentage chance of my battles in the ladder or the elevator in the Shinra building of which enemies I'm going to run into, because ultimately, you have no choice over who you run into. You're just going to go up a certain amount of levels each time until you reach the floor that you get off at, and you have no choice what enemies you're going to encounter. So things like that I've edited out to make it a little quicker to get through. But I got to give credit to Absolute Steve. Hopefully someday he gets around to making what I've seen. If you're familiar with the Quim forums or Anxious Heart, Seventh Heaven, any of the the live stream, any of the big Final Fantasy VII websites out there, you know that he has been looking for a graphic designer and looking for someone to help him put together his 800-something page guide into something that's a little bit more visually digestible, and adding some screenshots and maybe some links to some videos instead of just having it being white text or black text on a white background. I'll pull that over here now just to give the man some credit. This is his version of the guide. Table of contents, you can see how massive this thing is by how little this is moving. But there's just a lot of information in here. We're down here talking about the AP and XP and gil you get from monsters, and that's nice to know, but you don't need it for a playthrough. So I've edited it down to a couple hundred pages, and I use my version of his, but I still want to give credit to him. Okay. That out of the way. I don't know, a little bit of who I am. my credentials. So I'm an attorney, licensed to practice in a couple states. California, one of the harder jurisdictions to get admitted in. Arizona as well. I'm currently practicing Arizona. Done civil, done criminal law. I bring that up not as a toot your own horn thing, but I've heard a lot of stories. My undergraduate degree is in English Renaissance literature, so I'm familiar with Shakespeare and Milton, Jane Austen, what you would call the English classics, and some of the more modern works as well. Tolkien. Got a lot of Huck Finn type American finisher out there that may not always be the most kosher to read through, but are known as generally great works of literature. And for a long time, I think video games have gotten a bad rap because they're seen. They have been for a while seen as childish. I think that stigma is kind of washing away. But my background and my profession, I've heard a lot of stories, fiction and nonfiction. I've heard and read all of it. Generally, the annoying guy who sits there and watches a show with you and kind of knows where it's going because I've seen the themes, I've seen the arcs. I think it is my contention that of all the stories that have ever been written or told, that this is probably the best. That the story behind Final Fantasy VII, not just the game enriches and deepens that experience, but the story itself, I think, is the best story that's really ever been told. It's timeless. And we'll get into why. That's kind of what this first prologue is going to be about. There's plot twists, the big reveal, Cloud's missing identity, and the burning down of his hometown, Nibelheim, and that Sephiroth scene. You have subtle references to that throughout. You have, poignant and timeless themes that we'll get to. Thorough and authentic character development. Like, you really feel for these characters, and that's a medium that I think video games is better at than other forms of literature, like films or like books, because you control those characters. You might not have full control over the story, but some of the decisions you make will affect the story. This is one of the first games that did that. You'll go on a date with different people. You'll find items or lose items. You'll change the actual game based on the decisions you make, and then you feel like you've made those decisions, not the character. So that links you intrinsically to that character. A lot of games have done that since. This is one of the first that actually did that and did it well. There's quirky humor. Everything that this game does leaves the reader of the text, because you're going to see the original game. There was no voice acting in the original game, so you were reading. It was a way to get you to read. It leaves you with a sense of nostalgia, unlike any other, what I'll call just media experience. So, some of the themes that it covered, identity and self-discovery. So Cloud's journey is deeply tied to his struggle with his own identity. He really kind of believes himself to be someone that he isn't. He's mixing his identity with Zack, and it's because of trauma that he's gone through. A lot of the game revolves around that unraveling of his past and his difficulty in accepting it, and kind of the self-doubt that creeps in when he realizes what's been going on. But it's not limited to him. Other characters like Vincent, Red, or Nanaki Sephiroth, they all grapple with questions of who they are, and really where they come from. In Sephiroth's sense, literally where he comes from. He's heard his mother is Genova. He doesn't know what that means. And when he finds out, he fucking goes crazy. And it doesn't necessarily humanize him very well, but it makes it more understandable why. I mean, some of my favorite themes, environmentalism and corporate greed. This was in '97. These themes are still relevant today. The Shinra Electric Power Company, they're exploiting the life force of the planet, which is, I used to call Mako, and I think that's how it was going to be pronounced, but the new game says Mako, so I'll adopt it. Mako Energy, strictly for profit. I'm not going to make a political statement here on what side of that you should be on, but that's a relevant conversation to have today as well. That hasn't gone away. You could make an argument that at least the very first part of this game, Avalanche, is an eco-terrorist group. They're attacking the government with a political agenda in order to stop them from destroying the planet. So the game kind of presents an anti-corporate message, and how, like, an unchecked capitalism, because I don't think capitalism is bad, but unchecked, it can have some effects for those on the bottom, right? And how industrialization can harm the world. It doesn't necessarily have to, but it can if run amok. And I like how the planet itself in this game is depicted as an entity, not only in the sense that it is alive and there's life force, but it can fight back when it's threatened. That's what the weapons are. That's how they're explained, is it's the planet's ability to fight back. And I think that the planet probably does have a way to do that. It might not be weapons, fantastical, like in Final Fantasy VII, but one may be persuaded to make an argument that that's what global warming is. Right? If you try to mess with the planet too much, and then you successfully mess with the planet too much, then you are going to reap what you sow. Again, not taking a stance on that, but the fact that that was explored in '97 makes this game very deep and interesting. Fate versus free will, obviously huge themes. Many characters struggle with the idea of destiny, whether their path is predetermined or whether they can change fate. Sephiroth specifically, he believes after he kind of cracks that he's destined to become a god and reshape the world. Whether or not you get into a Dirge of Cerberus, that story can be expanded upon, or that theory. Aerith believes, Eris in the original game, which is a mistranslation, so Aerith was the original intent, so I'll say it that way. She believes that fate can be fought against. And Cloud's journey revolves around breaking free from the false persona that we talked about. His free will is questioned if you don't know who you are, right? These ideas, like the fact that they were in the original game, they're further expanded upon in Remake and Integrate and Rebirth, and we will get to those. But, fate versus free will is an age-old topic for discussion, and this game doesn't shy away from it. Life, death, and legacy. The game explores mortality through the deaths of key characters. Spoiler alert, almost a 30-year-old game. And how those who remain must cope with loss. I'll tell you, the first time you play through Final Fantasy, I feel bad for people who are never going to have that experience, because it's hard to stay away from spoilers now. I genuinely feel bad for people who will never have the experience of playing through the original Final Fantasy VII and having Aerith die on them. People will point to, and I use this as an example. People will point to Game of Thrones and they'll say something like Ned Stark. And he was a key character, but not really. His kids were. He was there for the first season of the show. And they kill him off and people will be like, I can't believe it. But even Game of Thrones, they shy away from deaths. In other words, Jon died, season 5, comes back. I mean, how meaningful is that? When the real main character dies. They shied away from it. I think Final Fantasy does it. It's unexpected. It comes out of no. Sephiroth drops from the sky and impales her. And you're like, what is happening? And it gives you a sense of loss through the way the game presents that. That is the closest thing to real life loss. Unfortunately, having to have experienced that, anyone old enough to have experienced that. The older you get, the more of it you experience. But it's like, she had armor on her. She had materia that was equipped to her. She had a weapon equipped to her. Those are gone. Like, you don't get a chance to take those off. You feel that loss in your inventory. In a lot of the ways, you could say that she, not Cloud, was the main character of the game. She was the last surviving ancient. She was the one with the power to cast Holy, stop Meteor, stop Sephiroth. And she's the one that died. Aerith Themes comes on now, so that's a perfect time. So the theme of death is masterfully explored, I believe, by this game and the way they present it. Because that's how it is in life. They're there and then they're gone. That does happen. Like the theme of legacy is strong too. There's a lot more in Crisis Core with Angeal hits it on the nose when he's talking with Zack, but how people live on through memories, actions, and impact that they have on others. Aerith's death again is one of the most famous moments in gaming history, emphasizing how death can be sudden, but the influence of her death, why she chose to sacrifice herself. She continues to have influence after she dies. And in that way, you can achieve almost an immortality through your legacy. The burden of the past, so there's multiple characters you're looking at. Cloud, Tifa, Vincent, Barrett with Corel. You could throw Sephiroth in there. Many characters, damn near all of them, are haunted by trauma from their past. And they must learn in turn for each of them how to confront that trauma. And it's a different process for all of them. And that's an important message. There's no handbook. You have to do the work. You have to get through it. You have to do everything you can. It's difficult, but it's possible. Shinra's past actions, like the Nibelheim incident and the destruction of Corel, those have lasting consequences. The past of the Shinra Electric Power Company. And redemption is a key theme. I don't think Shinra ever really redeems themselves, but I guess that's up for debate. Cloud has to redeem himself. Tifa, Vincent, Barrett for Corel is a very strong theme. So the burden of the past, another key theme. Another one would be like friendship and family. No one in the main party is related. They're from vastly different backgrounds, all of them. Right? Vincent was like a former Turk. Barrett is the founder of Avalanche. Cloud and Tifa kind of come from the same place, but they've taken vastly different paths to get where they are in the game. Every single Kate Sith is nothing like any other character in any other piece of media that I really know. Sort of like a spy that's a bad guy, but also a good guy, depending on context. But they all come together and they all fight for a common cause. And I think that's, it's black, white, yellow, green. It doesn't matter. You can find family. Barrett's relationship with Marlene. That's an adopted daughter. It's a non-traditional, relationship, but it's one of the best depictions of a father-daughter relationship. It's incredibly difficult. It's incredibly fraught. It's incredibly strained because of how he inherits Marlene through his friend, who he thought died and has to eventually kill. Red's acceptance of his heritage with that is a real familial tie, but he almost doesn't want to be linked to his father. But then he finds out who Seto is, and he's incredibly proud of him. Sid and Shera is a very interesting dynamic. It's rich with texture and it wide in its application in different types of friendships and family environments. The game touches on the danger and power of hubris. Sephiroth's descent into madness and his belief in his own superiority kind of demonstrate or show to the audience how ambition and power can, they don't have to, but they can lead to destruction. Just like Shinra's abuse of power ultimately leads to kind of their downfall. The game does a really good job warning against the arrogance of thinking you can control forces greater than yourself. Like Hojo's genetic experiments, Shinra's Mako energy consumption, trying to control these powers that are greater than you. It never really ends up that well. Love and sacrifice. I love how... So there's a love triangle between Cloud, Tifa, and Aerith. Obvious and clear. But that triangle is used to explore different forms of love because you're not always sure if Aerith is more of a sister or a lover to Cloud. Tifa kind of seems like more of the lover, but there's points where she's pulling back. It explores like the platonic to romantic kind of move that some relationships will make. And this triangle, it's a rare example of a love triangle where, and I love this, and I think it had a deep impact on me. These individuals in the love triangle, they don't descend into jealousy or fighting. They recognize the awkwardness of the situation they're in, but they're all good to each other. And they all work together, and they don't let it get in the way of either their personal relationships or the goal that they're trying to achieve. In fact, Aerith and Tifa quickly become friends and remain friends throughout the game. At times, they're even like playfully teasing Cloud about that situation he's in where he doesn't know who to pick or who to choose or whatever. The awkwardness that they're both kind of trying to hang out with him at some times. But they're never mean or nasty to each other, which is what you see most of the time. But it doesn't have to be that way. Sacrifice, Aerith's ultimate sacrifice is a major theme. She willingly risks and ultimately gives her life to stop Sephiroth. In Zack's story, but that's expanded upon further in Crisis Core, but we do touch on it a little bit in Final Fantasy VII when we go to Gongaga and we talk to Aerith through Cloud about that situation. That highlights the theme of sacrificing oneself for the greater good as well. Zack and Aerith, who are kind of linked, and they're kind of the original OG couple, and Cloud was kind of the fill-in for Zack for Aerith. Both of their stories are about sacrifice for the greater good. Revenge and forgiveness. So Barrett's initially seeking revenge on Shinra for destroying his hometown that he feels deeply responsible for. But he kind of ultimately learns that protecting the future, looking forward, is more important than looking pastward and seeking vengeance. Vincent's entire story arc revolves around his guilt and desire for revenge against Hojo. And he has to come to terms with that. And Cloud, in a way, has to forgive himself for the things he kind of wrongly believes he has done. So revenge and forgiveness are key concepts that are explored in this game and in depth. Finally, hope and rebirth. Despite the game's many dark themes. Music just stopped there. That's a little. I don't know why that would happen. I think I just did 30 minutes of streaming to lose internet at the end of it, so that'd be a little annoying. But I guess we'll keep going just to see. Hope and Rebirth. So, despite the dark themes of the game, it does, I believe, ultimately carry a message of hope. Okay, so that's good. Nick says I'm still here, so hey, the music came back. The ending suggests that humanity's going to go through struggles, but ultimately the planet survives and recovers. That ending frame, spoiler alert again, with beautiful bushes retaking the land and growing over the decaying corpse of Midgar and the Shinra Electric Power Company. That's hopeful. Is that evil is going to lose in the end, and that good is inevitable. The themes of Rebirth, those are seen in multiple ways, from Aerith's kind of spiritual presence after she has physically died. She can be felt at various points throughout the game and kind of returns in her own way. Red's glimpses of the future at the end of the game. Those are all themes of hope and rebirth that the game explores. And I don't even think, these aren't even all of the themes explored by the story of the game, but they are probably the major ones. And I think you're fucking every single one of them. They're making good points. They're right on the head. And these are timeless. You could take the eco-terrorism, environmentalism, corporate greed right out of a 1997 game and drop it into a game today with different characters, and people would identify with it and be like, yeah, I know what you're talking about. I get it. And we just went through, how I'm looking at my notes here. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10 themes. And I'm riffing here about examples for each theme. I'm certainly missing things. It goes way deeper than this. And we're going to get to all of it as we play through. But I just wanted to kind of highlight just how good, how deep, how relevant this story is and remains. That's why I think it's the best game ever created, the best story ever told. However, so I'll give you that caveat. The graphics don't hold up well. It's difficult to replay. And that's what you see in front of you here. So the original Final Fantasy VII was one of the first PlayStation 1 games, again, in 1997, just 30 years ago. For me, it's easy because I hold so much nostalgia for the game, but for others, people that I've told to play through it, some of my friends that kind of know the story, but I wanted to play the full game and kind of experience it. It's difficult to get into because of how old it is now. It's just like listening to Black Sabbath. Modern metal is heavier and faster, and they do things they couldn't have done back then on the instruments, and they have better recording equipment, and it's hard. But in the context of the time, it was great. It was. But playing it now is difficult. So I want to give some shout outs, some of the mods that we'll be using to kind of bring that game into a form that will be enjoyable for an audience, or at least I hope will be enjoyable for an audience to run through, to play through. And I'm understanding that a lot of people are going to be watching this kind of as a guide to get through the game. This is going to be available to you as well. So if you want to use the exact same mods I'm using to make your game look exactly like I'm using, I'm showing you this screen, and that's the reason why. So you can kind of have that same experience. If you want to play the OG, I get it. I still do. But if you don't, if you want an updated, I won't say it's completely perfect by today's standards, but it's better than the original. Then these are the mods you're going to want to use in this order. You can ignore the ones I have turned off. I was trying different mods. These mods are good. It's not anything against their author, but I've made choices about how I want the game to look. I want to remain very faithful to the original, but at the same time, kind of bring it into the new to the new world that we're in. So, like, if you have a choice between these Nino-style chibi models for the overworld, this is not in battle, but this is for the overworld, or these Nino-style HDs, these are probably better, but it's too far of a departure from what the original feel of the game was. So I'm sticking with these. Tsunamod's Cosmo Memory, this is a complete sound overhaul to the game, so a lot of the sounds are going to be updated. It's going to be more of a symphonic version of the original score of the game. It adds ambient sound effects to the game, so like footsteps. So there's just going to be more immersion that's not there in the original game. I don't think that takes away from the experience. I think these mods enhance the experience, but you just got to realize that this is not a full 100% go through of the original, right? We have some UI tweaks just to make the user interface look a little bit better. Bring it up in line with modern games, battle UIs and battle avatars. It allows me to play in widescreen. The original game was in 4:3. My monitor is a 1440p monitor with 144 hertz, so it's a 16:9. So I had to, it's AI upscaled to allow it to go into 16:9, a little widescreen. Gameplay tweaks, you've got some things on here. The saving anywhere. So in the original game, you couldn't save it anywhere. You had to find save crystals, and that was kind of part of the game. It was part of the charm, but just for convenience sake, right? It's incredibly convenient to do this. Running by default. I don't want to have to hold the X button to run. I just want to be able to press forward on my controller. It was weird that the game made you do that in the original anyways, because you were just sitting there for so long. You're just holding the run button, but you're always holding it. It could have given you a toggle. So just little things like that, things that I would consider quality of life adjustments. Echo S. So this is a big one. As I had said earlier, the original game was text. You had to read it. You had to I think everyone kind of gave the characters their own voice in their head. Tsunamod's team has put together Echo S7, which is fully voice acted Final Fantasy VII. So you're not going to have to sit and hear me read everything when we're playing this game together. When I'm going through this, the voice acting is pretty good. They think they did a pretty good job. And, I played through the game a little bit and jumped in and out of some different spots, and I didn't find anything that wasn't voiced. Every flashback scene, every optional moment that I was able to get into, they had it voiced. It's incredibly thorough, incredibly well done. We'll see if we find anything that's not voiced. But it says full voice acting. And I don't think they're kidding. I think they got it all. Cosmos FMV 30 FPS. So this is a character replacement model for the FMVs. So all this does is these better looking characters, it put those in the FMV. The FMVs didn't look bad in the original, but there's a little bit of an immersion break if your chibis look this nice and then in the flashbacks they don't. So this just gives you good looking chibi characters, those octagons for your FMV sequences. And the original Final Fantasy VII, I believe, was in 15 frames per second. So it was a little jittery. 30 frames per second is just a little smoother. This mod just enables 60 frames per second gameplay, so it's going to look a lot smoother. It looks great when you're playing. Much needed. And like I said, I have a 144 hertz monitor, so 60 hertz is not even trying to hit. Nino style battle. This is, these are battle models. So in the fights, in the battles, your models, this is my take. You don't have to side with me. Your models in the original game, when you got into a battle, were already better than the chibi characters. So I didn't mind as much upgrading those characters. So you see, I did not go with the Nino style HD for the world maps, but I am using those models in the battles. So when you get into a fight, the chibis go away. These are your overworld models, and you'll see these guys instead, and they look awesome. I haven't seen a single issue with them. It's great. Avalanche isn't battle texture, so it's just... so this changes the textures for the environment. It's just... So they redid from the ground up. They took all these and they redid these textures. Look at how amazing these look. It just looks phenomenal. It adds a lot to the game. Again, it's part of the charm of going back and playing is how bad those original graphics were, but I feel like that's probably not that great for an audience playthrough. So, we're going to update our battle models as well. The unified battle textures, like you see the battle backgrounds, they're as close as possible to vanilla texture, right? But they're AI upscale with lots of manual tweaks to get an HD experience. So things like this, the AI is figuring out what these characters are supposed to be and, placing them in here. And like I said, manual tweaks to make sure that they're getting those types of things right. It's very well done. The battle textures look absolutely great. Axl Rose's Blender 1, this is a kind of a lighting fix. So there's a shadow light effect of the ground and floor that's not great in the original. So you'll see off and on how this, you encounter this often in the game where the shadows are kind of like, the gradient is so noticeable, and this smooths that same thing out. So that's what this does. It's a small mod, but it's incredibly well done. So props to Axl Rose in this one. The Nino style chibis we already went over. They look great. So this is all the HD backgrounds. So like when you are playing the game, the backgrounds are pre-rendered backgrounds, and your character walks across them. They're not, for the most part, not interactable with. They're just kind of backgrounds. So this upscales all those backgrounds. So HD backgrounds for every single scene in the game. Unified minigame texture. So this is just all the minigames. Just upscales. So this is off, this is on. So you're seeing you're upscaling here. Look at these trees versus these trees, right? It's not enough to where I think you're changing the game, you're being unfaithful, but it's just nicer. Look at the chocobo, how much clearer it is here. So you have your minigame, snowboarding game, you're going to have a nicer looking time. This goes to all the minigames, Battle Square and things like that. The unified spell textures, just your spells are going to look a little nicer. Close to vanilla. I've checked them. They look like what they were trying to do in 1997. It's not 100% faithful, of course. Oh shit, you're right. Yeah, the screen to myself is blocking it. You can kind of tell whatever, but I could do something like this, so you could see the on versus off. I don't think this departs too far from what this was intending to be. It looks better, and I think that Tsunamod's team did a really good job staying faithful to what the original intention was. It only looks like this, not because they thought this was the best, but they had significant limitations on what they were able to do in 97. We're in 2025, 28 years later. And Cosmos Gaia, so this is a world map overhaul. It re-implements the terrain rendering to add analog movement and camera controls, real-time lighting, and extended view distance. So you can view the world map in an entirely different and new way with this mod. The world map looks better, but you can zoom out and see more of the world map. You can change the camera, which was always an issue with the original game. So these mods are the ones that I've chosen. I'm not. There are other mods out here, and it's not like I don't think something like what are some of the other mods? A hardcore battle mod that makes the game fun, or people are always the curse ring challenge where it gives everyone a curse ring. That can be absolutely fun. Shinra Archaeology Cut is amazing, and I'll probably go through that at some point. It re-implements a lot of the original content that was cut from the game, because you got to remember these guys were under insane pressure to release this game on time, and a lot of the stuff was left undone. I'm not trying to say that these mods aren't worthy. I think each and every one of these mods, New Threat is great. True Necrosis is hilarious. You start off with full HP MP, but no way to recover it. It's an entirely different way to try and play the game. These are all really interesting, but for a faithful to the original playthrough that is brought into the modern world with voice acting, this is the way to do it. That's my opinion. We're 46, almost 50 minutes in. So that's my introduction to this series and what this series is going to be. Recap would be, I think this is the greatest game ever. I think this is probably the best story ever told. That's why I'm going to play through it. We're using Absolute Steve's guide, my own version of the guide that's been tweaked in order to get through it and make sure we're not missing anything, to have a perfect game, to get all of the content, to not miss anything or leave anything out, so that you get a full experience on this playthrough of what this game is. Because maybe even with these mods, you wouldn't be tempted to play through. But maybe someone in the future will at least watch through these videos, and they'll be exposed to the story that way. I mean, I think probably what would happen is they would just go play Remake and Rebirth, because those games are fucking amazing. They're so good. But this is the goal here. Bring it up into the modern world as much as we can while remaining faithful to the original game, and play through. So I'll play through these originals. We'll take a look at it. I'll cut the external music. We'll go through our initial sequence, and then we'll probably end this video. And we'll go into episode 2, which is going to be chapter 1 of the game, The Raid on Reactor Number 1. Let's mosey. So here you're going to get a forward. It's giving us the option to continue because, like I said, I played through the game to make sure we weren't running into bugs and things like that. I'm going to go ahead and select a new game, so we're going to experience the original intro, upscaled into HD. They're telling us, welcome to Project Echo S. Again, that's the voice acting. So they're just telling us some things like, hey, this game's going to be voice acted. So has some optional features you may have missed inside 7th Heaven. That's the mod application manager. I haven't missed them. I went and checked everything I wanted to check. So it says you can double click it. Some options are on by default. You can turn them off at any time. That's fine. Created by the entire community. There's lots of people that voiced NPCs. So again, thank you to them all. I think they deserve this shout out. They did an incredible job doing what they did. They ask us to report bugs. Again, if you see the bugs that I don't see, or if you're playing through using this mod because I've showed you to and you see a bug, report it to them because they do care. They give a shit, and they will fix it. You can see in this original FMV that the left and right side, it's not really detecting anything to upscale right now. Kind of giving us that Cosmos feel, but as you'll see, it kind of morphs into a live stream and then into Aerith's face. And that's a lot of foreshadowing for those of you that know what we're about to experience. Look at those upscaled models. Look at those upscaled models. You can see when it transitions out of the FMV sequence to use the new backgrounds how good these look. Jesse kicking that motherfucker in the head. Wedge's fat ass coming out.
Get down here, Merc. You're up.
Look at the icon next to his name. Showing who he is. The voice acting, it's so good. So I think here, before we actually get into the game, is where we stop the video. I have save anywhere on, so we're just gonna save here. We'll save over our old section, and we'll end it here.